Pranakasha live stream.
Hey folks, it's Matt at Pranakasha Productions, and today we are talking with TJ Manrique, an extremely talented sci-fi author. Oh, TJ, it's so great to have you.
Great to be here. Thank you very much.
So great. I'll have to admit, I'm a little frazzled because I literally just got off the plane. I've been in Star Trek Las Vegas the whole week, and it was an amazing networking event, and I'm still trying to sort it all out in my brain, but wow. If you've never gone to one of those, you got to do it, because there were some sci-fi authors there. They had like booths and stuff like that. So it doesn't have to strictly be Star Trek if you can figure out how to convince them to let you have a table.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I'm a Trekkie from way back. I'm talking.
Oh,
cool. The original series, the whole thing, black and white even. So I'm talking way back.
Cool.
And I'd love to go to one. I haven't been able to yet. I was going to go to one in 2019.
Okay.
COVID hit, and that was that. So, and this year, I was planning to go to Las Vegas, but guess what? COVID hit me, so I couldn't go either. So yeah. That was a little bad, but I have a lot of people that I follow on Twitter that were over there.
Yeah, it was amazing.
It looked like it was a blast.
It was so fun. And the thing that's so cool is, like, for people in the industry, or like people like me, where I'm trying to expand my brand, Pranakasha and everything. I made so many contacts. I mean, I was in the vendor room the whole time, meeting people. And the amazing thing was also just in the hotel outside of the convention, stuff was happening where I was meeting people and giving out my card and lining up interviews and all kinds of stuff. It was like a gold mine for any of that kind of networking stuff. It was so cool. Yeah.
No, I mean, that's great. And the thing is, for somebody like me, for example, I love to go to that kind of event, because of the energy that's in the room, the people you get to meet, the people you get to talk to. I love to hear different takes, on episodes, on series. Different people get different feelings, different vibes, just like people love a certain character more than another. Right. You got the Spocks, you got the Kirks, you got the McCoys, you got the Scotties, of course, and so on and so forth. So I really love that kind of stuff, hear the why for what I do.
That's cool. Well, okay. I mean, so for example, let's go right into that. Actually, maybe we should do a little bit. I'm going to back up because we just jumped in and I didn't even tell. Well, I just said you're a sci-fi author, and then I launched into STLV. But yeah, I have all your stuff here. So like, this says that you were born in Venezuela.
Yes, sir.
Right. And you got a Bachelor of Science in Biochemistry from UCLA.
Right.
And then a Master of Science in Pharmacology from the University of the Pacific.
Right.
Okay. And you did, so pharmacology is sort of like pharmacy type of thing, or what is that?
Pharmacology is, we're the ones that make the drugs rather than sell them and fill prescriptions.
Okay.
Pharmacists are, on the one hand, the commercial side of it, and on the other hand, the advisory side of it. Pharmacist in a hospital helps the doctors with right dosage, prescriptions, contraindications, that kind of thing. Pharmacology, though, what we do is, let's take a very popular drug, Viagra. A pharmacologist.
Oh, yeah, I heard of that one.
Have you?
Well, I am over 50 after all, so.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll take whatever we can get to.
To enhance performance.
Right. If we need that extra 10%, well,
exactly.
Might as well use it.
Exactly. So a pharmacologist was working on a high pressure drug. because the compound actually lowers the blood pressure. But when they were doing the clinical trials, this side effect showed up, and all the men were really happy with it. So that's what pharmacologists do. They figure out.
So you mean as a male enhancement drug, that was an accidental side effect?
Oh yeah, that was a side effect. It's a great story. Pfizer people will tell it all day long.
Okay.
So that's what pharmacologists do. They take a look at a molecule. It should do certain things because of its structure.
Okay.
So then you plan it, you test it. If it works in animals, then you move to human trials. And this particular drug that we're talking about just had that peculiar side effect.
So you guys actually orchestrate and run the trials and collect all the data and all that?
And process it and the whole 9 yards.
Oh, okay. That's interesting.
Yeah. So I did that. I got my master's on that. And I originally wanted to work in the pharmaceutical industry back in Venezuela.
Cool.
But this was early 80s.
Okay.
And if you weren't in oil, you weren't in anything back in Venezuela. So I ended up going into the medical disposable devices, distribution, sales, marketing, and did that for 40 years. So,
cool. Well, I'm going to go to the conspiracy theory rabbit hole real quick. So as a pharmacologist, did you ever run into or hear about a situation where, okay, such and such a drug is not quite panning out the way we want it to, but the company has invested X millions of dollars, so we want you to kind of put your finger on the scale and help it out a little bit?
You're absolutely right in the sense that is a very popular conspiracy theory. It's one of the things that it looks like it makes sense. It looks like it would be common sense that would happen because of the humongous amount of money that pharmaceutical companies put into drugs. But the reality is very different. The reality is pharmaceutical companies start out essentially in the colleges. They give grants and they stimulate people to look for a certain type of drug, go after a certain pathology, and they start getting a whole bunch of results.
Okay.
By the time they get to human trials, the number of drugs that actually don't pan out are so few that they just decide to just discard it. It's just not worth it. The real problem in the pharmaceutical industry is the orphan drugs that actually work. They've done the human trials, they've done everything, and the drug works, but there are not that many people with that particular pathology. Therefore, it's not commercially viable. So instead of selling the patent to India or another country that has very cheap manufacturing facilities, it just becomes an orphan drug. It's got no house, it's got no family, it's got nobody rooting for them. So it's not a perfect world, but at least it's not as bad as Hollywood makes it.
Okay.
So,
well, one rabbit hole spawns another one. So now I have to ask you, I was just yesterday talking to a friend of mine who has fibromyalgia, and I was asking her about what is it and how is it treated? And she was saying nobody really knows, except that it's some kind of weird neurological thing that causes extreme pain and really messes up people's lives. And it took quite a while for doctors even to take it seriously. So do you know of anything going on in that field?
Fibromyalgia is one of those conditions that is gathering a lot of interest.
Good.
But the problem is that what she said is exactly correct. at this point, we don't know what the problem is. And if you don't know exactly what the problem is, you don't know how to attack it.
Right.
So that's where they're at right now. They're conducting trials. They're trying to figure out if it's a degenerative disease, if it's some sort of genetic marker, if it's a situation that a bacteria is involved, a virus is involved, a prion is involved. So they're at that stage. They're studying it from that side in order to see how they can attack it. Okay. But that is one of the many, many conditions that are very problematic in that sense.
Okay.
So it's one of those things. That particular condition is very tough.
Yeah.
People, what they do is they go very holistic route. So meditation, yoga.
Nothing wrong with doing that.
No, it helps a lot. It helps a lot because it allows them to center themselves. It allows them to handle it a little better. So,
and then I think also it's just managed using just different types of painkillers.
Yes, and that's where it gets hinky. Because there's painkillers and then there's highly addictive painkillers.
Well, let's go there for a second. So,
of course.
I remember, I don't know how long it's been now, but now marijuana-based painkillers are finally hitting the mainstream. And I remember when people were, like, it had like a stigma to it, and people didn't want to have anything to do with it. But and I kind of felt the same way too, like, that's a little shady. Until I did a little bit of research and I discovered that, what do you know, all these oxy-based pills, guess what they are? They're basically heroin.
Exactly.
They all come from poppy seeds, and no wonder they're so addicting. So what I tell people is, okay, which would you rather take? A pill based on heroin or a pill based on pot? Now, I think the answer is pretty obvious when you put it in those terms.
The thing is, right now, it's not even the oxy, of course, is one of the drugs that's in vogue. But the problem is when you go over to the drugs that are effective in femtograms and nanograms, like fentanyl, those are the problem. Because since the amount that is effective is so small, right, it's very easy to make them, because you can make just a few grams and you have several thousand doses.
Okay.
So it's very attractive to the industry, to the mainstream industry.
Okay.
But it's also very attractive to the illegal trade.
Right.
So
I'm not even talking about illegal. I'm talking about legal dosages.
And that's precisely why I'm going there, because when the doses are so small, you can have a large production that is actually a couple of kilograms. So, if a couple of kilograms is 2,000, 3,000 doses, it's very economically viable to make that drug.
Okay.
And what they've done is, just as you said, all these opiates, what you've done is you started with the heroin and you've been refining and refining and refining and taking that molecule, tweaking it, making it a little better, a little better, a little better. And
but it's basically the same thing in my book.
It's the same family.
I mean, okay.
We're talking about the granddad and the grandchild and that kind of stuff.
Like, I've never taken heroin, okay? Thank God I just would never even consider it. But I did have kidney stone once, and they gave me, what was it called? Shoot. It was an oxy. What's the one?
Oh, oxycodone?
It wasn't that one. Percocet.
Oh, Percocet.
I took Percocet. Okay, so it had two effects. Number one, it completely destroyed any physical pain, amazingly fast. Number two, during that time of my life, I was under a fair amount of stress, and it destroyed any stress.
Leveled it out.
Well, I mean, I was just in a state of bliss, basically.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, wow, I can easily see how anybody could get addicted to this.
Yeah.
So, and I assume that's pretty much what heroin is. I've heard it described, and it's like you're sort of in this white light and everything's fine and it's a bliss and you never want to leave it. You want to stay there forever. That sounds to me pretty much what Percocet was like.
Yeah.
You know?
No, all of these drugs have different effects. They affect people differently because everybody has a different sensitivity to them.
Yeah.
But my experience with them. At one point in my life, I was in extreme pain. I had to go to the hospital, and they gave me morphine.
Okay.
And my father was an anesthesiologist, so he knew what he was doing.
Okay.
And I told him it's not going to help me because it's just not. And he said, "You know it will." And I'm going, "No, it won't." So they gave it to me. It did make me better. The pain went down a lot, but because of the particular pain I was feeling, it didn't completely go away. And he was sitting there telling me, "That's not right. It's got to be gone." And I'm going, "No, it isn't. We're all different. And this particular one won't go away with that." And I didn't want anything else. At that point, I just wanted to write it out and let things settle. Next to me, it was an emergency room, and we just had the curtain partitions. And right next to me was a person screaming that they wanted more morphine. And I knew for a fact that person wasn't in pain. That person was addicted. So, it's very delicate. It's a problem. It's a true problem, both to the caregiver, to the company that produces it, and of course to the public in general. Well, and as you say, I mean, now you have access, for example, to the cannabinoids and the cannabinoid-based products. They're a lot friendlier in the sense that they're not quite as addictive.
Are there places in the U.S. where you can even grow poppies? Will they even grow in our climate?
They would grow. Oh, yeah. They would grow here.
Okay. So how come the pop? I mean, what I heard is a lot of the reason why we're even in Afghanistan is because that's where the source of heroin comes from. And that's where the poppies are. Is that true?
Whether we are there because of that, I can't speak to that. But yes, it is true. In Afghanistan, there are vast fields of poppies.
So, I mean, if that's true from a geopolitical point of view, it seems better to convert everything to marijuana base because then we can bring it all back on shore and we don't have to get into this, Well, what we do. I mean, there's always some blanket excuse as to why we're going to war in some country. And then you figure out the real reason, right? There's always some profit-based real reason why we're even there.
Absolutely.
And so you would think that the industry would like to switch over to more cannabis-based stuff now that it's become acceptable.
The thing is, just a quick example. Okay. I think it's in California. They've gone completely legal with marijuana.
Same in Seattle. Now, Washington's the same way.
Yeah, but in California in particular, the small growers are going out of business because now the big business is growing marijuana in huge marijuana farms. So it's the funnel law, the wide end for the guys with the big butts and the little end for the rest of us. So it's the same thing. It doesn't matter what we're talking about. It's always going to be like that. There's going to be a big industry that's going to come in, and if there's money to be made, they're going to say, "I'm it. I'm first at the table, and I take the biggest bite."
Yeah.
So.
Okay, so as usual on my show, I diverted us way off topic, but it was interesting, wasn't it?
Absolutely.
So we're trying to just get through your bio. Okay, so pharmacology from the University of the Pacific. Okay, I'm not going to even ask about the University of the Pacific because that'll probably take us another 15 minutes.
Right.
Because I never heard of it, actually. But
It's a small school out in Stockton, California.
okay.
And their specialty, or rather their biggest faculty, is pharmacy, the pharmacy school.
Okay.
And then, of course, they have the pharmacology program.
Okay, and then you worked in the medical supplies field for 35 years.
Mm-hmm.
But during that time, you loved sci-fi, and you read Jules Verne at an early age and were quite taken by it. And then in the 60s, you discovered Star Trek, the original series. And then you started, quote, a torrid love affair with science fiction.
Correct.
Okay, I don't exactly know what torrid means.
Let's say it's very passionate. I mean, when I was a little kid, I would enjoy the black and white serials, Flash Gordon, Buck Rogers, the cigar-shaped ships with the sparklers on the back. And I thought that was great. I mean, they had the lizards made up to look like dinosaurs, the whole 9 yards.
Cool.
So I really enjoyed that. And I always thought that was my kind of stories.
Okay.
So then when Star Trek came out, I mean, that was the epitome of special effects.
Yeah.
I mean, you could see them using the transporter to, dematerialize here and rematerialize there. Amazing.
Had you seen Forbidden Planet yet?
Yes. Oh,
I thought they based it on the Forbidden Planet energy beam thing.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Forbidden Planet was another one of the ones that I liked. Okay. And anyways, fast forward to the 70s. I actually went to Los Angeles in 77 when Star Wars came out.
Yeah.
And it came out like 2 weeks before I got there. And I went to see it at the Chinese Man Theater. And
the Chinese Theater in Hollywood?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm always interrupting, but I can't let that one go. Do you know who Mark Zickery is? You know him?
Not right now, no.
Okay. He has a thing called Space Command.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, and they just did a red carpet event at that Chinese theater like 3 weeks ago.
Wow.
And this is all, the stuff in here is all Buck Rogers type of stuff, right? Exactly what you were talking about.
Yes.
And he's a super big Star Trek fan and Twilight Zone type of guy. So he's like, I had to throw that in just because you're talking his language too. Anyway.
Absolutely. And Space Command, I saw excuse me, they have a couple of episodes on YouTube. Mm-hmm. It looks fantastic.
Yeah.
And we're talking Star Trek. So obviously the name escapes me right now.
Okay. So Robert Picardo, who is the holographic doctor in Star Trek Voyager, is a star in Space Command. Also, right. Doug Jones.
That's him.
Who he plays Saru in Star Trek Discovery. And also he plays many, many creature characters in all kinds of movies.
But he's always covered up.
Right.
Whereas in Space Command, you can see his face.
So. And you're like, wow, he's really good. I mean, his face is so expressive.
Yes.
And it's so Doug Jones, if you actually know him and if you've ever seen him in person. Mm-hmm. Who, by the way, was at Star Trek at Star Trek Las Vegas last week, signing autographs and doing selfies. And the guy is a nut. I mean, I walked by, there was a giant line. And I'm like, who's there? Oh, it's Doug Jones. And then he's sitting there kissing the person on the forehead and coddling them and hugging them. And I'm like, I want some of that. And I came back the next day and I said, can you kiss me and do all that stuff that you did with that other person? Sure. So I got like all kinds of pictures of like the same thing, you know?
Wow.
Because he's such a loving person. I don't know if you've ever seen any interviews about him.
I've seen a couple. and he seems like an amazing person. And he did this role in the movies about water. I can't remember what it was.
The water movie, and he was it was kind of sort of a modern version of it reminded me of, what is it? The Creature from the Black Lagoon.
The Creature from the Black Lagoon. That's exactly what it reminded me of. Yes.
Yeah, he was the monster.
Yeah, but he was so expressive. I mean, he transmitted a lot, physically. So,
you know what I found out is his early training was as a mime. So he learned all about body language and stuff through that.
Yeah, well, that explains it. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, amazing. So once again, I diverted you. We made it all the way to Star Trek. We were talking about Star Trek.
Right, okay. Right. So I was a huge fan of Star Trek. Then I moved to LA for UCLA to study. I watched Star Wars, and that was it. I was completely hooked. I mean, it was
the
science
moment
fiction.
That thing is flying over this gigantic ship. I remember I was like 11 years old. It was like a religious experience. I was like, holy crap. And I was in this giant theater with this Dolby system, so the whole place shook.
Right.
And I was like, whoa, this is going to be a good movie.
Exactly. Now, the funny thing, though, is that when I came out and started talking to my friends, I was going, that had a lot of fantasy in it. And they go, what are you talking about? That's science fiction in its purest form. And I'm going, no, it wasn't. I mean, you had knights, literally knights. And, you had this wizard, which was a black wizard, literally black. I mean, so we had that discussion, which I had also with the same friends about Anne McCaffrey's The Dragon Riders of Paran, because they said that was fantasy. And I said, no, that's science fiction, because the dragons are genetically engineered. They colonize the planet and so on and so forth. Yeah, they ride the dragons, but that's a different story. So, And then, of course, I watched Alien.
Oh, man.
Oh, yeah. And I'm not ashamed to say it. I couldn't sleep that night.
Too good. The one that killed me.
Yeah.
The first one, of course, was scary. But when I saw the second one, for me, that was much scarier because it was in such close proximity all the time.
Right.
And they're like climbing over you and dropping down on tarantulas all around you and stuff like that. Like
exactly.
I had nightmares for a week.
Oh, I believe it. I absolutely believe it. So after I watched Alien, the only way I could get my sleep back was asking myself questions. And the first question was, how come this thing survives inside of a human body? Because it was a whole thing, no, it's keeping it alive. It's breathing for him. And then, of course, a chest burster bursts out. And I'm going, that's a very specific size for the proboscis or whatever to go into the person. Leave the little chest burster there, have it grow inside the person without killing it. I mean, the whole thing was, wait a minute, how does this work anatomically? Of course, they addressed that in Prometheus and the last few movies. But at the time, it was a fantastic exercise to try to figure all of that out. And when I was going to school, I had some fantastic professors. My genetics professor, part of the exam was if Jawas and San people are related, and then he went into a Mendelian kind of problem. So it was really interesting. And I just went science fiction crazy for all of those years.
Okay, one more diversion, and I promise I'm going to stop doing this. You mentioned, I think you mentioned something about evolution. Did you mention that?
Yes.
A question popped in my mind. This is the thing. I totally believe in evolution, right? obviously things evolve. We have the evidence, but I am not sold on the mechanism that causes it. Like, I can see how natural selection can account for some of it, but there's certain parts of it where, like, there's no way natural selection is going to cause that. And my biggest argument to that is there's no way that something can evolve from a land animal that walks on the land to a bird that flies in the sky, because the interim step, you're neither. So how does that give you an advantage to keep surviving?
You're right. And that's where mutations come in.
But it would have to jump. So how could you possibly have a random mutation that suddenly jumped you into something that's aerodynamically sound? I mean, to be able to fly takes a lot of things. And to be able to fly wild takes a whole bunch more.
Yes. Yeah. And when you start looking at that kind of stuff into, because you're looking at big picture, in that size of things, it's really big picture.
Okay.
Going from water to land is not quite as difficult.
Okay.
Because we see amphibians and we see that kind of species, which is kind of okay. But when you start looking at, for example, bats or birds, then you start going, wow, wait a minute. Just as you said, did the first ones just jump really high and they had big arms so they could flap them? I mean, what kind of evolutionary pathway could possibly generate that end result? And that's when viable mutations come in. And one of the things that we don't realize is that the Earth has gone through several different periods where mutations were much more abundant than they are now.
Okay. Because of cosmic rays or whatever.
Exactly. Plus the fact that you have highly stressful environmental situations, like, for instance, volcanoes, earthquakes, all of these kinds of things that we as humans don't see anymore. I mean, we live in houses, literally climate controlled. So we don't feel them anymore. It used to be very different, and it still is in certain areas of the world. But we don't see as many mutations anymore. We see more of the smooth evolutionary curves.
Okay.
So that's one explanation. There are many others.
But that didn't satisfy me at all, because, again, my point is, I mean, you can't just go from a squirrel to a bat in one generation, right?
No, you don't.
Like what the usual one they say is you can get from a squirrel to suddenly you got a squirrel that has skin in between its limbs, and now you got a flying squirrel. And so that could work, all right? And then maybe from flying squirrels you could develop bats. But of course, bats aren't even evolved from squirrels, right? They're evolved from mice, aren't they? But so for that, I could see it could happen. But again, a flying squirrel does not fly. It falls out of a tree a little slower.
Correct.
That's different than a crow that can actually fly through the air with great precision and land anywhere it wants.
No, yeah. And you have to take into consideration the whole other set of senses that they have.
Right.
Because they can sense the magnetic field of the Earth. They can sense... No, I mean...
Yeah, there's highly specialized.
Exactly.
So I just do not buy that a bunch of random mutations plus a little slight advantage of survival is enough mechanism to create these amazing abilities that certain animals have.
I absolutely understand where you're coming from.
So I'm finally saying, well, a lot of times people say, well, that's the only way it could possibly be, so we just have to go with it because we don't want to believe in God, that's for sure. But I mean, there's other possibilities. Maybe there is some kind of innate intelligence within the body systems of an animal, and somehow that intelligence is able to somehow redesign the DNA so that it can actually, in an intelligent way, mutate from one to the next with some kind, not just random, but there's some actual intelligent design behind it. I'll say that, but now I'm not saying that it's the hand of God. I'm just saying it's some kind of built-in intelligence in the system. Now, to me, that sounds more reasonable than a bunch of monkeys typing on a typewriter and hoping it becomes Shakespeare, which is basically what the other version is.
Exactly, yes. No, you're absolutely right. And the thing is, excuse me, remember, we're still talking about the theory of evolution.
Okay.
Because evolution is an accepted science. You can show evidence for it. There's a lot of arguments in its favor.
Okay.
But there are still many, many things we don't know.
No, I'm not arguing against evolution. I'm arguing against the mechanism of natural selection being the only thing that causes multicellular organisms to evolve.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And that's precisely where I was going with this.
Okay.
There's a lot of things we don't know. We just finished studying the human genome, which was one of the big things that everybody said, oh, once we know what the human genome is, then we'll know. No, we don't. We just mapped it. We have a map. We don't know where it goes. We don't know where it's come from. So there's still a lot of things we don't know about how the DNA works, why it works that way. Take mitochondrial DNA. Mitochondrial DNA goes down to the offspring through the mother only.
I call it mitochondrial.
Yeah, mitochondrial.
Okay, yeah.
So, why? What's the evolutionary advantage of having it come only from the mother? Oh, it's because of this and that mechanism. So it's one of those things where there's a lot of things we don't know. There are things we can explain and they make sense, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's right.
Correct.
That's one of the beauties of science.
Right.
I mean, you have to be able to defend your thesis with, a lot of strength and very emphatically. And if you're wrong, you have to say, you know what? I was wrong. You're right. Let's revisit this. And I think that's the beauty and the strength of it.
Okay.
When I find, and I have found people that are, no, this is the way it is. That's a fundamental problem right there. If you're not willing to accept that there's a different explanation, you have a problem because you just closed your book. You're not going to learn anything else. So, and by the way, I'm talking about people in academia.
Right.
I've seen that happen.
Well, there's a lot of other forces in play. In academia, I mean, there's funding, and then there's also sort of a social hierarchy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, those are the two big ones, right?
Oh, yeah. Big egos. And there's a lot of competition for money. Very simple, straightforward. And there's never enough to go around. And
those are powerful forces, and whether they admit it or not, those affect the way people think.
Of course.
Mm-hmm.
And how they communicate.
Mm-hmm.
Because at one point in their lives, they say, no, I got to be very emphatic and I have to be very sure of myself. Otherwise, they're going to give it to somebody else. So, and we all lose from that.
Yeah.
Because one of the beauties of science is, the wonder and to be able to ask more questions.
Oh, God, another tangent came. We're supposed to be talking about your sci-fi books, but I was just listening. Did you know that Anson Mount has a podcast called The Well? Have you heard of that?
No, I haven't.
I didn't either until he gave me his card after he signed an autograph from my wife. And I took it home and I was like, The Well, what's this? And it says Anson Mount, producer, host. So I went and listened to the podcast, and one of the topics was, oh shoot, now I just completely lost what it was. Oh no. What were we talking about before I just diverted us?
Well, we went.
Oh, this is what it is. I'm sorry. What it was is they told the story of the guy that discovered why so many women were dying in childbirth. he discovered, and I think this is in 1850s or something, that the reason why, and he had absolute proof, he did studies and everything. I can't remember the guy's name, but he figured out the reason why so many people were dying in this particular hospital, so many women, during childbirth, was because the surgeons were going and operating on people and getting blood all over them and germs and everything, and they would immediately go deliver babies without washing their hands. And the guy even did an experiment, and he told the doctors, always wash your hands before you go deliver a baby. What do you know? The death rate went way down, like way down. I think like 10 times less, by tenfold. And you'd think, oh, wow, I mean, everybody should do this now. But guess what? No one would listen to him. And in fact, he spent the whole rest of his life trying to convince the medical community to freaking wash their hands. And they refused to do it because it was against, there must have been about a bunch of other reasons. Maybe they didn't want to be liable or something, but the whole community refused to do it. And he ultimately died in an insane asylum when he was like 45 years old. And the story I heard was that the whole academic and medical community wanted to silence him. So they tricked him to go visit an insane asylum. Then they captured him and committed him. And then he somehow got gangrene and died. That's the real short version. But if you go over to the well, you can hear the long version of it. I'll put a link in the description. But so There's a perfect example of what we're talking about, right?
Absolutely. Yes. Yes. I mean, sadly, I'm not surprised. It's something that I've heard many times.
Okay.
And I used to be in touch with, because of course I went into, I made the cardinal sin of going into the commercial side of things, but I still had a lot of friends that stayed in research.
Okay.
And we used to talk about that all the time. The sense that a lot of people are very, very adamant about
entrenched is a word too you might want to use.
Yeah.
Entrenched.
I'm right. And
so do you think it's pure egoism, or is there also a lot of financial forces in place that don't want to change the status quo?
There are certainly financial forces. Absolutely. But I think mostly is ego.
Wow.
There's a lot of ego going around, and people love to be right. And they even more love to prove others wrong. So, sometimes they dig their heels in just because out of spite. It's a sad thing, but it's true.
Wow. It's so amazing that in that case about the women dying, now it seems insane that something like that would happen. But then even in that podcast, the guy said, you know what, I'm not even surprised. Even how horrific the end result was, I'm not surprised that it happened.
Yeah.
That does not bode well for human nature generally.
What can I tell you? But the only thing we can do is try to be better than we were yesterday. That's it. But most people don't even try to do that. Most people just are happy to just roll along with their lives, and that's it. So.
Which is why we love Star Trek. Because
absolutely.
Star Trek gives us a optimistic future where humans can actually drag themselves out of the mud and act like intelligent beings.
Exactly.
Become citizens directive of the galaxy.
Exactly. Prime directive, the whole 9 yards. And then, of course, you have the Orville, which is the, there you go.
This always happens. The moment I do that, everything crashes. Sorry.
No, that's okay. Take your time.
Dum bum ba 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 ba. Dum bum ba bum bum ba ba. Dum ba da dum bum ba da. Da-dum, da-da-dum, da-da-dum, and so on.
Well, that's right. You're a musician. No wonder you can go through it.
The reason why I know it is because I wrote an arrangement for solo cello that's surprisingly is in the original key, because it turned out to be in C Dorian, which is a great key for the cello. So I actually have to put out a video where I play it. So I actually know it inside and out now.
Oh, I'll absolutely look it up, because I saw a couple of your
I haven't
videos.
published it yet.
No, I saw a couple of your videos on your original work on the viola, I think it was.
Violin. I'm on my YouTube channel. I'm playing mostly cello, but there's a couple things out there of me playing violin. But I can also play viola too.
Yeah, it was very nice.
Thank you.
Very pretty.
Was it like a tango or something like that?
Yeah, it was. Yeah. It had that kind of rhythm. Yes.
Was it violin and guitar?
Yes.
Yeah, that was a tango. We did that. What we did was we spent a day in this class where this tango expert came and taught us all the rudimentary things about how to play a tango. And then at the end of the day, they had a house party. And then the guy's band played, basically was the live music. But then at the last second, I told them I had my violin in my car because I didn't have time to go home yet. So I didn't want to leave it in my car, so I brought it to the party. And they're like, "Oh, you got your violin. Do you want to just sit in the band?" And I'm like, "Okay." So that duet that we did was pretty much off the cuff, though we had learned how to do it during the day. But then we're just like, "Yeah, let's do this duet. Should we try it? What the heck? Let's just do it. It's a party. If it crashes, who cares?" But it came out good, and luckily we were recording it. We were videotaping it at the time, so I threw it up on my YouTube channel.
That's nice, though.
Yeah.
It came out really good.
Yeah. Well, Stuart, the guy who played guitar, is really good too. And actually, he has a lot of training in tango, so he knew more what he was doing than I did. That's sort of part of what a tango is you kind of, what you get is you get a chart that shows you the basic melodies and the chords, the basic guitar chords under it. And then what you're supposed to do is follow a certain form, but then within that, you're supposed to do a bit of improv around it. And that's the whole fun of it. That's what we did.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was fun. Yeah, okay, so the Orville, of course, I'm going to say this. I'm going to do a pitch for the Orville, too. For one, we want season 4.
Yes.
For sure, because season 3 was so good. Also, I was wearing Orville shirts at that Star Trek convention. Underneath my Pranakasha mat coat, I was wearing this coat everywhere, too. But I had a couple Orville shirts. Actually, the shirts were from JP's site, which he used to be called Egotastic Fun Time, but now he's talking the Orville. It was one of his T-shirts, or several of his T-shirts. Anyhow, when people would say, "Oh yeah, the Orville, I love it." Almost all the Trekkies there that I talked to love the Orville. So I wonder why that is, because...
Well, Seth MacFarlane said that he was ripping off Star Trek left and right. However, in my personal opinion, he based the uniforms on Galaxy Quest because the emblems are very similar and the cut of the uniform is very similar.
But that's just one level removed because Galaxy Quest was ripping off Star Trek.
I was just going to say it was like a party of a party. So the whole thing was great. So I think the show went from good, which was season 1, to really good, which was season 2, to oh my God, which was season 3.
Yeah.
What the arc they gave the Charlie character, I was amazed.
Yeah.
I was really impressed with that. That was cold, cruel, very well calculated, and I loved it.
Okay, folks, remember, the person talking is a sci-fi writer, so he may know what he's talking about.
Maybe.
So there's let us, now that we've gone for an entire hour and we haven't even gotten to what this video is supposed to be about, which is about your science fiction works. Right. So what are you working on right now? What's your biggest project that you'd love people to learn about?
Absolutely. I have, during the pandemic, I wrote a lot. Okay. And there was nothing else to do, so I would literally be writing 10 hours a day.
Wow.
So I wrote 4 books altogether.
In the course of 2 years?
I beg your pardon?
So you were writing about a book every 6 months then, right?
Just about.
Yeah, that's fast.
It is. But like I said, there was nothing else to do. So my first book is called The Ray Initiative Project, TRIP.
Okay.
And that one is about...
These are all on Amazon, right?
Yes, they're on Amazon.
I'm pointing to the link in the description where you can buy this book on Amazon.com. When I do that, that's what I'm doing.
Good. And so that one is my debut novel. It's a near future thriller. And what I tried to do there was I read a lot. I like to read. I like to read a lot of science fiction. I read a lot of thrillers. And there's been a long time since I read a book that was slow in the sense that it took its time with people, tried to bring the characters over to you in the sense of making you care, getting you to know them. So I wrote that one because of that. I wanted a well-developed character that people by the end would be able to say, yeah, I know that guy. You know, if you saw him in the street, you'd know who he was. So that's Trip. It's a thriller because it starts with this guy who's lost his family and he decides to go to another planet from zero. So it's the whole story about how he goes about assembling the team that allows him to do that. So that one I enjoyed quite a bit. Then while I was writing that, I discovered the writing community in Twitter. And there are several challenges, I guess you'd say. There's people that give you, okay, if this is the cover of your book, what are your first lines? And this illustration is a scene from your book. So, what would you write?
Who created so these are little games, and it was fellow authors that created these games?
Exactly.
Oh, cool. Okay.
And so one of them was a woman, warriorish, in a ditch with a gun, and she looked all, scared. So I wrote a tweet with a little story of that particular person at that particular time.
Now, as part of the rule, it has to fit within 256 characters?
Exactly.
Oh, wow, that's hard.
No, it's very challenging. And I really enjoy it because it makes you really boil it down to the bare minimum. But that particular one, I mean, I've written hundreds, if not thousands, but that particular one blew up. I mean, people were saying, dude, write that book. I want to read it. So I said, okay, fine, I'll write it. And I did. And that one came out August 29th. That's when it got released.
That's today. And a year ago today?
No, that's today.
Oh, it came out today?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So,
wow, that was is the word serendipitous?
Serendipitous, that's right.
Yeah.
So that one was a lot of fun to write because I'd never write female main characters. I usually write male main characters. It's just easier for me.
You being a male.
Yeah. So that one I had a lot of fun because I would call my daughter, my oldest, and I would go, listen, I'm having this girl do this, this, and this. What do you think? And she would help me out, She'd say, oh, she's been too girly, Dad. Make her tougher. So that was a lot of fun to write.
Cool. I don't want to, now please, let's not go too far off the track, but do you know who, oh shoot, now I can't remember his name. Andy Weir, The Martian? Yeah. Did you read that book?
Yeah.
Did you read his second book, Artemis?
No, I haven't read that one.
Okay, second book, in my opinion, kind of failed mostly because he tried to write a woman character and he blew it. He totally blew it. I did not believe that was a woman. It was basically just Andy Weir.
Right.
A pretty naive conception of what it's like to be a woman. So that's it. That's the tangent. Now we can go back to
But that's a
TJ.
great tangent, though, because it's one of the problems that we face, writers do.
Okay.
We have all these characters in our mind, and we try to put them on a page so that the reader can enjoy them.
Mm-hmm.
The thing is, sometimes we don't know. Sometimes we don't know what a person would do in that particular circumstance. And sometimes what we envision them doing is not something that sits well with the reader.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the main reason why every author out there knows that somebody is not going to like their book, and they know that somebody's going to love their book. But both things are going to happen.
Right.
I mean, I don't care if you're George R.R. Martin, if you're J.K. Rowling, it doesn't matter. Somebody's going to love it and somebody's going to hate it.
Okay, great topic. So, if you're writing a Hollywood movie, by default, the goal of that movie is for the most people to watch it.
Yes.
Therefore, that movie is aimed at the middle.
Correct.
Therefore, it's in other words, it's designed to be mediocre.
Exactly right.
So I was thinking about this exact thing today because a friend of mine and I are developing a new show, and I'm half joking, but I'm half serious. And I'm saying the way that I'm going to measure how good this show is, because it's pretty controversial, the subject, is by how many people absolutely violently hate my show.
And you'll know it's good.
Right. Because I got under their skin.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Because also, if there's people that absolutely violently hate that show, there's also people that love that show so bad, they're going to promote it for me.
That's it.
Yeah.
Going back to the Orville for a minute, I've heard, for instance, with The Tale of the Two Topas.
Oh, yeah. All you have to do is mention that show and I'll start crying. In fact, now I'm already tearing up. Believe it or not, that episode was so good. I just have to think about it and I start crying. And I mean, almost everyone who sees that show starts bawling.
Absolutely.
And some of us start bawling just mentioning it.
I believe you. I absolutely believe you. And the thing is, I've heard people that violently dislike that particular episode.
Of course. I mean, it goes straight to the heart of some deep issues in society right now, right?
Yes.
Whew. So, and man, it just puts it out there in absolute terms where you can't just like try to pretend that's not happening.
That's exactly right. So, and on the same topic and coincidentally the same species in the Orville, when the Mucklin women have their, village.
Yeah, their secret hideaway.
Right.
Yeah.
And I was watching a YouTube show that they were talking about the show, and there was one of the persons that were going, well, I really didn't like the fact that they were portraying this women as being pastoral and, in harmony with nature, and this and that, whereas the Mucklin males were all industrialized and they destroyed the environment of their planet. And I'm going, dude, wait a minute. You're talking about the planet that it's one of the military main forces in the galaxy. Of course, you're heavily industrialized. Of course, they're heavily developed. And then you're talking about people whose very existence is supposed to be a secret. Of course, you're hiding in the jungle or wherever you want. You're not going to be heavily industrialized. I mean, it makes internal sense in the story. It has nothing to do with the gender. Mm-hmm. But it's just a very visceral reaction to it.
Yeah. Well, that's the genius of Seth MacFarlane is when he creates conflict in his stories, it's not black and white. Like, he doesn't say, okay, these are the good guys and these are the bad guys, and we're going to hate the bad guys as much as we can, and we're going to kill them at the end so we can all be happy, so the good guys win. He never does that. He always just presents different viewpoints, and he doesn't actually seal the deal in the end. That's why I love the way he tells stories, because it still leaves it open-ended, so that you think about that story even after it's done. You're always just contemplating, well, okay. Like, for example, the Krill, right? The Krill are essentially the bad guys. But then I think it was season 2, they did that episode where basically Seth and Gordy pretty much exterminated everybody on the ship except for the kids. Mm-hmm. And the feeling was, shit, Seth and Gordy are the bad guys. They're like terrorists. They just fried everybody on the ship. And he left it there, right? He left that, and then now he follows up with it now in season 3. You now have this relationship again with the Krill. It's all gray. I mean, it's never black and white. You're always showing, if there's people that are kind of evil, you at least are shown their viewpoint, and if you go deep enough into their world, you can kind of see how they're justified in what they do. That's great storytelling, I think.
No, and one of the brilliant lines in the show was when they were in the peace talks with the Krill, that the Admiral Perry was going to sign with the ambassador, mm-hmm. and they take him to see Annie, and of course it's the sun will come out tomorrow.
Oh yeah.
And then the guy goes, oh, the hunting, frightening image of the sun coming out. And of course, it's exactly the opposite of what we feel.
Right.
I thought that was just brilliant.
It is.
So.
And the even more brilliant thing is, do you know that Seth MacFarlane has a beautiful singing voice?
Oh, yeah. I found out today.
Oh, today? Okay, go out and look. There's a whole bunch of YouTube videos out there where he's singing like show tunes and classic jazz and stuff super well. I mean, like really good. Obviously, he's had a lot of voice lessons because his voice is not only pleasant, it is amazing.
Yes. I was...
obviously, he knows that world. So, and you can tell once you know that, you're like, oh, that's why he's bringing all these references in from like Broadway and Annie and all this other types of genres. He's able to bring it into the Orville because he loves that stuff and he understands that stuff and he can do it in a sophisticated way.
Exactly. Exactly. No, I literally stumbled across a video of his today, and he's singing Tuxedoed Up. Mm-hmm. He's singing "Ain't That a Kick in the Head," and
I've seen that. That's one of my favorite ones.
And I was going, "Oh my God, that's amazing!"
Also, his stage presence is very good.
Very good, yes.
Not only the singing, but the acting that goes along with it and everything. Like, ain't that a kick in the head? No,
and
the guy he's a total pro.
Yes, yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, and I mean, I grew up with Sinatra, Martin, all of them. So, that's my music too.
So, Yeah.
I enjoy it. I don't know if I'll go as far as say that I know, but
what I would actually say, to tell you the truth, Seth MacFarlane's voice is better than Sinatra's as far from a technical point of view. His voice is better well-trained, more technically smoother. I mean, when you want to get down in and really analyze what he's doing, that's a well-trained voice. He obviously studied with a great teacher and then also really took everything he learned to heart.
Like I said, I've only heard that one, and I heard it today, but I was blown away. In fact, I heard it 3 times, one right after the other, because I said, I can't believe it. And
yeah. What I think? I've been wondering about this. Why isn't Captain Ed sung on the show if Seth is such a great singer? But I think the reason is because it would be out of character for Captain Ed to be that good. So instead of Seth faking that he's a bad singer, he just says, just don't have him sing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Plus, that's one of the beauties of the character, the Captain Ed character, is that he's a deeply flawed person, but is also very capable in his specialty. He's very good. But everywhere else, it's a disaster. So that's a fantastic character. It's very relatable. It's quite enjoyable. And of course, it gives a gateway to drama. It gives a huge gateway to comedy.
Yeah.
So, very good, very enjoyable.
Yeah. Well, okay. If now do you want to keep digging into the Orville, or should we get back to your stuff?
Let's get back to my stuff.
Okay.
I have 2 more books to talk about.
Yeah. Otherwise, we're going to talk for like 8 hours.
Easily.
Yeah.
So then for Halloween, I'm going to give a try. I'm going to give horror a try. Okay. I a long time ago, one of the movies that really scared me was Romero's Dawn of the Dead. So zombies have always been something that interests me because, of course, then you have Resident Evil with the T virus and this and that. And it's always very science fiction-y, how they reanimate the dead. But I also did a little digging into the original voodoo ideas. And,
how about Frankenstein?
Frankenstein and the Mummy. They're both examples of reanimated dead bodies, which is one is magical, the other one is scientific, but they're both the same kind of let's call it story. Okay,
dare I go there? What about the story of Lazarus in the New Testament?
That one is very delicate.
Very what?
Very delicate.
Delicate.
It's because Lazarus is not, he died. He was gone. And then when he gets brought back, it's implied that he comes back perfectly healthy, normal. Nothing's wrong with him, but it's not detailed. At least not.
There's an important detail, though, that we'll have to go back and look exactly. But there's a detail where it says when they rolled back the stone, there was no stench of rotting flesh, right?
Right.
So you could interpret that he didn't completely die. It was just in a coma.
There's, like I said, I mean, when the reference is that he comes back and he's perfectly healthy again. So then he probably wasn't dead. It's one of the things that doesn't make sense. And of course, there's the miracle that comes in. And no, the thing is that from the power of God, depends on what you believe.
Right. But there are clues.
It certainly sounds like a catalepsy kind of situation. Where the guy was in a very heavy catalytic state, but it's neither here nor there. It depends on what you believe. Anyways, so
not to get too controversial,
a little bit. Then I saw Shaun of the Dead, and I thought that was very creative. Because it was very interesting to me how they were able to marry humor and horror. So I gave it a try. And I wrote a book called Zombies. That's What Happened. And
is that available at Amazon yet?
No, that one's coming out in Halloween.
Okay, well, tell you what, folks. If you come back on Halloween and watch this video again, you will see a link to it right down there in the description.
There you go.
If it's not there yet, that means you got to come back again and keep coming back and watch the video over and over again until you see the link. And be sure to like and subscribe also. And leave a comment. Okay, sorry.
So that one is going to be, it's a doctor that's taking a vacation in the Florida Keys.
Okay.
And he comes upon an island in the grips of terror, and he doesn't know what's going on.
Okay.
And of course, as night approaches, everybody is hiding and trying to get away because that's when the zombies come out.
Uh-oh.
Now, he doesn't know anything about this. He comes up to his B&B, knocks on the door. The people come out and say, "Are you insane? What are you doing outside? Come on in." And then he finds out that there are zombies in the island, and everything goes downhill from there. So I tried to make it a little humorous. I have a couple of beta readers that have read it, and they've read all my other work too. And with Trip, they were very upset with me in the first chapter. All of them said, "You made me cry. That's not fair." With this one, they said, "You made me laugh." So that was good.
Do you need any more beta readers? Because my wife does that too.
Oh, of course. I always need beta readers.
Okay.
Now,
I'll hook you guys up.
Absolutely. I'd love that. Thank you.
Okay.
So those are the three that are in the pipe right now. And then I have one that I'll probably bring out in December.
Okay.
That's called Another Boring Day in Space.
Another boring what?
Another Boring Day in Space.
Another boring day in space.
Right.
So it's the story of the International Space Station.
Close, but not quite. It's a ship it's an interstellar ship, and they have to sleep 6 months. They're awake 6 months, but it's all routine.
And
it's going to take 11 years to get there.
So why do you have them wake up every 6 months?
It's a cryo. They go into cryo sleep every 6 months. And if they stay asleep for more than 6 months, they start to degrade. So they have to wake up and walk around and be active for about 6 months. And then they go back to sleep. Now
that's a different take on that. I haven't heard that trope before. Is that common?
Nope. I've never heard it either. And that comes from my take on cryogenics and all of that jazz. I don't believe you can just freeze somebody and, freeze and forget, and they'll be fine, hundreds of years from now or 10 years from now.
Because you happen to be an expert in a lot of that kind of stuff.
And it just doesn't make sense to me. But that's just me. I may be wrong. It's happened before, and it'll probably happen again. But so at any rate, this guy is, sleep for 6 months, awake for 6 months. And then this time around, there's a murder. It's a ship. It's closed. Nobody can go anywhere. Everybody's been vetted. So who killed this guy? Why did they kill him? And the worst part of it is that they're saying you did it. If you didn't do it on purpose, then you committed manslaughter, but you're it. And the guy's going, no, wait a minute. I'm innocent. What are you talking about? And it goes downhill from there.
Oh, okay. So it's kind of a whodunit then within a sci-fi genre.
It's a whodunit in space.
Cool.
And it's a close room mystery also. So,
wow.
Yeah. That one I had a lot of fun writing because I had to try to make it difficult to find out who it was.
Okay.
But at the same time, I wanted people to be able to know, oh, it must be this person. So.
Okay, I have a question now. Actually, I have two questions. But the first one is, when you're writing a book, do you have a definite plan of how everything is going to go, or is it a little bit looser, and then as you write it, it can still evolve and possibly go in a different direction than you thought?
That's a great question for any writer. There's two kinds of writers. That's a common conception. Plotters, those are the ones that, okay, this is the beginning, this is the middle, this is the end. This is how this worked. I have this many characters, this much dialogue. And they break it all out, they plan it all out, and then they sit down and write. Then there's the pantsers that they say, this is a great idea for a book. They sit down and bang it out. Taking a page from George R.R. Martin,
Mm-hmm.
he says there's gardeners and then there's architects. Architects are the ones that lay down the structure, are very careful with what they do. And gardeners are the ones that have an idea. It's like when you take a tomato seed, you plant it, you're going to get a tomato plant. You don't know how big, you don't know how good, but it's going to be a tomato plant.
Okay.
I'm that kind of writer. Me
too, actually.
Oh, really?
That's also how I compose music as well.
Awesome.
Because I just love the it's like I'm going on an adventure, even though I'm the one writing it. You know, and I'll have a general plan of what happens, but when I actually flesh it out, sometimes something will happen. I'm like, oh, what if it goes this way instead? Let's try that and see what happens. Oh, wow. And then hopefully it'll circle back and there'll actually be something that happened earlier on that relates to the direction that I ended up sort of, quote, accidentally going.
Right.
And that's, to me, is just so fun. It's almost like you're playing D&D rather than writing a book.
That's it. Yeah. And that's the way I look at it is I'm the first reader of my novel. As I'm writing it, I'm reading it. And I have other writers that have told me that they have the exact same experience. You're writing away and then all of a sudden this character comes in. Well, I didn't think about it before, but I need somebody to do this. Mm-hmm. And then, wow, this character is really interesting. And then you get a whole other layer and, so.
Well, my theory about all that is that it's all coming from your subconscious, and your subconscious is actually working a lot of stuff out. And then once it has something worked out, it kind of sends a message up to your conscious mind, and then you have a choice whether you want to follow that message or not.
Exactly. And then, of course, any book needs to be edited and re-edited and re-edited. And then you have to get somebody to read it, give you their feedback. You have to change some things, adapt some things, cover plot holes. So it's a long process.
That was actually my second question. So, which was like, once you send it to your beta readers, have you had to do some major rewrites based on their reactions, or how does that usually work?
Not from the beta readers. Usually my beta readers have been pretty good in the sense that they have likes and dislikes, but there are some characters that I write because they're bad. They're not going to be liked. Okay. So that works for me. Mm-hmm. Where I have had to do heavy rewrites is with the editors. I work with 3 editors that are very good, very thorough. One of them is a brilliant person. He's from the United Kingdom. And he's very good.
Are they authors themselves?
Yes, they are. He's brutal, but he's very good. So I've had to, in fact, one of the novels I had to change the ending. Is the developmental editor told me that was a different editor. It's a lady from here, from Orlando. She's also very good. And she read it and she said, I understand the ending. I understand why you went this way, but consider this.
So obviously that person's an author. To anybody who would even presume to say that to you who created this thing.
Yeah. No, but guts. She was right. It worked a lot better. I rewrote it and it came out much better. So,
have you watched The Expanse, or have you read any of those books?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So those books are actually written by 2 people. Daniel Abrams and Ty Frank, I believe, is their names. And they do a collaboration. What I heard is what they do is like one guy will write one chapter and the other guy will critique it. and then the next guy will write the next chapter, and then his buddy will critique it, and that's how their process works. And then they fight about it and rewrite, and then finally they get a cohesive thing that works.
Yeah.
Does that sound like anything that you'd will be able to ever consider? Or
I consider it. It'd be tough because I'm when I get into one of the projects, I live and breathe it. I mean, that's literally all I do. So it would be really tough to work with me unless the other person was just like me.
Right.
But it would be heavy going. I'd love it. I mean, let me put it out there. I'd love it. I'd love to collaborate with somebody in that way.
Right. And I think actually it started out as a sort of mentor-student relationship. I'm pretty sure Daniel Abrams was basically the mentor to Ty Frank. I think what happened is Ty Frank I know he created a game and he created a world to support this role-playing game. And then Daniel Abrams said, "This is so good. You've done the hardest part of writing a novel. You should just write a novel based on what you just created." And then I think he coached him through it. And then at some point it became sort of a partnership. Right. I believe that's how it goes. Might be wrong.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I'm not familiar with that situation, but it sounds about right. Because trying to remember the name of the show. There was a show also based on a game, and it was essentially the same idea.
Was it sci-fi?
Yeah, it's a sci-fi show. I want to say it's Deliverance, but that's not the name of it. It's I can't think of it right now.
We're getting old.
Yeah.
Things fall out of our brains.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So, I think we hit 3 of your 4 books, right?
No, we got them all. We got
all 4.
Yeah, we got Trip. We got Einstein's Shadow, Galactic Holler, which is the one that's coming out today. We got Zombies, That's What Happened, which is coming out in Halloween. Okay. And we got Another Boring Day in Space. Sorry. That's coming out in December.
Are you going to do like a book tour with signings and stuff like that?
I wanted to get this 2 out first. Okay. And once I have them out, and Einstein's Shadow has been out for about a week or maybe 15 days. Okay. I'm going to start doing promotions, really aggressive promotions to get it out there. And after that, yes, I want to go out, do book signings, do a little bit of a book tour. There's a couple of places I really want to go for research, but also take advantage of getting in touch with people there. So
okay. And do you still have a day job, or are you a full-time author now?
I'm a full-time author because I'm retired. So
okay. Yeah. So so you have some kind of financial support outside of your art, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So, and that allows you to put some of your own money into the book to promote it, right?
All of the money for promotion is my own money, yeah.
Okay. So you're self-publishing it?
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
I'm all for that,
Yeah.
Then you have control over it. And then also, you don't have to sell 1 million books to get halfway decent amount of money because you get a much bigger cut.
That's exactly right,
Yeah. Do you print large runs, or do you just kind of print as needed?
I print as needed. I only get maybe 25, 30 books at a time.
Oh, great.
Because most of the time it's just through Draft to Digital or through Amazon. Okay. And people order it and they print it and send it. So.
Oh, great. Okay, next question. What about an audiobook?
Done and done. Trip is an audiobook.
Oh, great. Are you the author, or the narrator, or who's doing it?
No. As you can probably tell, I would be no good as a narrator. A very talented person by the name of Benjamin Hunter He's a Canadian voice actor.
Oh, cool.
And he is fantastic. He did a great job.
Next question.
Yes.
In this situation, do you just pay him up front, or did you give him like a up front plus sort of a cut of the sales?
There's two ways of doing it. I'm doing it through ACX. So
what does that stand for?
Amazon something.
Okay.
It's an Amazon company.
Okay.
And it's called ACX, and it handles most of their audiobooks.
Okay.
And they have a roster of narrators that they can audition for you.
Oh, wow. So it's all set up.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that makes it easy.
Yeah. You send out about 15 minutes of text, and they'll read it back to you.
And you audition them, basically?
Yeah. And
cool.
Then you hear the different auditions, and I had never done it before, but it was my first time doing it, and I thought it was fantastic. I mean, there's so many people, so many talented people out there. This guy just had the voice, had the inflection. The piece that I sent for the audition was a congressional hearing. So I had a very aggressive senator going after the main character.
Cool.
And this guy was fantastic.
And he could play different voices and stuff.
He didn't do voices, but his inflection changed enough that you knew it was a different character.
Cool.
The tone of his voice, there was contempt, and there was anger, and there was humor, and it was great.
Those guys are
obviously
so good.
I went with him. So,
and those guys, those voice actors that can do, and basically they don't have time to like do a jillion takes. They're pretty much just doing it right off the cuff. Most of them, if you're going to make it through an entire novel, you just got to be able to pour it out there. But those guys are just right on.
Yeah. Well, Ben, for reasons that are not relevant, made one mistake and sent me his practice recording for one of the chapters.
Uh-huh.
And so I was listening, and of course I take notes, and between this and that, it's not this word, it's that word, or whatever. And he sent it to me, and I was shocked because there were I could hear him breathing. There were pages turning, that kind of stuff.
You know what he probably does? I mean, he probably takes a cut out of it. Then he goes into the audio file with an audio editor and cleans it all up,
Absolutely. Yeah. But no, there was also some hesitations, repetitions. And he tried different intonations. So I wrote him, hey, listen, man, I think you sent me your practice file. And his answer, he usually takes about a day to get back to me. Mm-hmm. That one he answered in about half an hour. And he goes, oh my God, I'm so sorry, that wasn't the right file. So he uploaded the other one. That was fine.
That's cool.
Oh, it's great.
So then how does it work? You pay him up. How does it work? You pay him up front through this service, or how do you work it?
There's two ways of doing it. One way is you tell them, okay, I'm willing to pay X amount for the book. It's this many hours, and they tell you, okay, it's this much per hour of finished product. So, for instance, Trip was 8 hours for all practical intensive purposes. So it was X amount of money.
Okay.
The other way of doing it is you split the royalties with them.
And nothing up front at all?
No, nothing up front at all.
And they don't have a hybrid version where like, I'll give you this much up front and this much of royalties?
Not at ACX.
That's interesting.
It's either or. And because I'm a new author, and I have faith in my books, but I was going to put him in that kind of situation. So I just went ahead and did that part.
Oh, so you determine which way you're going to do it. It's not like a negotiation between you and the voice actor.
Well, it is a negotiation in the sense that they audition for you and then you make an offer.
Oh, okay. I see. Yeah.
And they can pick. And with him in particular, first off, I was blown away. I mean, I really like him. And he's a charming guy. And towards the end, I said, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this kind of lunch. And eventually I'm going to do this kind of promotion and, have book plates and have bookmarks and this and that, just little knickknacks to make it more attractive to people. Mm-hmm. And I told them off the bat, if you're interested, we can talk about, a royalty share. But if you're more comfortable with it, I'll just go ahead and pay you what we
flat rate
negotiated.
Yeah, okay.
And he said, whichever way is more comfortable, I prefer, this is what he said, I prefer an upfront payment. And I said, say no more. It's done.
I like to pay my bills on time.
Exactly.
I need to pay my rent.
He's a voice actor, man. I mean, you know how it is. Some of them have a lot of work, some of them not so much. And some of them, it's their additional income. It's not their day gig. So,
Wow. That's actually quite fascinating. I'm glad we talked about that part of it.
Yeah, I'm thinking of doing Einstein's Shadow. I'm thinking of doing an audiobook with that also.
Okay.
But I have to audition for new voice actors because that's a female lead. So I'd rather have a female reading it. The thing that I ran against is that most female voice actresses read romance.
They what?
They read romance. They don't read science fiction. So
true.
It's been it's been a little bit rough going.
Okay. That spawns yet another question, but I want to back up to my mind because the question I had was some audiobooks are, as we describe it, other audiobooks are practically like radio plays where there's sound effects and music and all that. So do they have that available on Amazon yet?
No, on ACX they don't. There's a couple of other places. Draft to Digital has their own audiobook platform. And I understand that you can negotiate that part with them. In other words, you can have sound effects, you can have several different voices, several different actors. This particular book wasn't the right novel for that.
Right. Plus, obviously, if it's more elaborate, it's going to be way more expensive too.
Right. So, but I've heard about it. I haven't heard any audiobooks yet that are like that. I don't hear very many audiobooks. I read most of my books, and I haven't come across one yet. So I don't know.
Brent Spiner's new book has that.
Which one?
Brent Spiner. He's a Commander Data.
Yeah.
His book what he did, of course, he has actors from the next generation in his book, and they're all his friends. So he had them voice their own parts. So obviously that worked for all.
Of course.
And then he threw in every once in a while there'd be a little bit of sound effects in, not too often, but occasionally. And there was also a little bit of music tossed in here and there, just little smatterings. But it worked really well. Yeah,
wow, I'll have to look for that one because I haven't.
It's called fan fiction something or another. I'll have to look it up. It has nothing to do with fan fiction. Actually, the story is basically he's getting stalked by a crazed fan. So it's kind of like it's sort of like a whodunit mystery.
Okay,
it's really good. It was really funny. Yeah, and of course it's from first person, and he plays Brent Spiner in the book. Though I assume it's sort of a fictionalized version of Brent Spiner, and maybe amped up a bit. amped up or amped down as needed.
Of course.
And of course, he voices himself. You know. Yeah. Okay. One other final question. I mean, suppose you are given your audiobook as is with just that one author. Do you now own all the rights to that audiobook?
Yes.
So if you wanted to, you could potentially take that, make a new edition by adding sound effects and music, and maybe another actor just edit it all into what you got.
Yes.
Right? Is that possible?
Yes.
Okay, so that could be one way to do it in the future if you want a more, elaborate version somewhere down the line.
Yeah. Well, I have an idea for a couple of books for the future that would definitely work well in that format. In the sense of, and there's just this weekend I was in a authors activity at Orange County Library System, and there's a place I didn't know about where they do readings once a month. And one of the readings you can take, it's got to be between 6 and 12 minutes, can't be longer than that.
Okay.
But you can, for instance, bring a dialogue from your book, and you can have several people read it. Oh, and cool. Essentially, it's kind of like a radio drama, the old style radio dramas.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
And if they're done well, it's super effective.
Yeah. And I'm curious. I'm going to go next Tuesday, actually, because it's next Tuesday. So I'm going next Tuesday to see how it works, because I would really be interested in, taking a couple of the dialogues out of my books. I'd probably ask for volunteers over there, who wants to read it with me.
So it's all done live, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And of course, I mean, you could basically audition people, just watch the live show and say, oh, I like that person.
Exactly.
I like that person. I like that person. And then eventually you can handpick your cast.
Yeah.
That's cool.
That's the plan. That's exactly the plan.
So that's what I would do too. Wow. That's so cool. Well, it's so fun to just do. I mean, as you know, creative stuff is so fun. That's why we do it. Cause it's a huge amount of work involved, right? But the work itself is very satisfying,
It's I was asked once if it was worth the investment, in the sense that I'm putting a lot of time in it, I'm putting a little bit of money in it, and I said, of course it is. Like I said, I'm sure there's going to be people that hate it. There's going to be people that love it. But the thing is, I feel really good doing it. Right. I enjoy it immensely. I've had people come up to me and say, wow, this part was great. That part was great. That's good enough for me.
Yeah.
I'm good right there.
Well, just the fact that what you just told me is that if you yourself are really happy with it, then that means if you yourself are happy with your work, that indicates that it was created from, I would say, from the subconscious and from like a real authentic place, as opposed to something that was totally contrived, and it is a bunch of tricks, let's say, a bunch of silly tricks. And that's why you hate it, because you know every single trick you did.
Right.
So
right.
I think that's a good sign.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Cool. All right. I think we hit a good point to wrap it up.
Okay. Perfect.
So let's one more time. We're going to make a plug for the book. So book number 1, link below, is
Trip, the Rhea Initiative Project.
Okay. Book number 2, link down below, is
Einstein's Shadow, Galactic Hauler.
Okay. Book number 3, link down below as of Halloween, is
Zombies. That's what happened.
And book number 4, link down below, is
another boring day in space.
Okay. Woo! All right, thank you, sir. So thanks, TJ. It's great to have you on the show again. And I think if you could figure out how to get a table at an event like Star Trek Las Vegas or whatever, like I said, there were sci-fi authors there, and their books had nothing to do with Star Trek, but somehow they convinced the creation guys that they should have a table. So,
of course, I'm absolutely gonna be up to those kinds of shenanigans soon. I promise.
All right.
And listen, Matt, I appreciate this very, very much. I really, really thank you from the bottom of my heart. I enjoyed it. It was great.
Yeah, we had a great time. All right, sir. Now we do our live long and prosper. Whoops, move it over a tad.
Okay, there we go.
Zoom likes us. Live long and prosper, sir. I look forward, and I'm going to see you on the chats. We tend to hang out in the same live streams these days. So
absolutely.
We shall chat at each other.
Take care.
All right, take care.
Pranakasha production. Fantastic creations emerging spontaneously from the space of life.
For the benefit of all beings everywhere.
We gotta